When you start from the question, how do we manage to find sustainable societies? You instantly think about economics and economic systems as a means to higher ends. Because what you're aiming at is well-being for a society within planetary boundaries. That's the whole formula that you're actually pursuing. And then you look at different means to get there, and we see that we have to re-identify metrics that actually allow for us to see this. And maybe two examples that we also have seen here during the symposium discussing the effects of paradigmatic thinking is that economics tends to chunk everything in pieces, whereas ecosystems and societies are complex systems that have relationships. And those are very influential on the development of individual pieces, and if their integrity and their functioning will continue to thrive. Be it relationships of cooperation, of caring for each other, or of cooperating between firms, for example. We see the effects of very predatory ways of acting between firms in the US right now, and then there's no resilience to fight back against quite authoritarian attacks, for example, from a political regime, because you don't collaborate on defending certain ways of interacting, but you're thinking, if my competitor is being eaten by them, then we will get the contracts. So there you see an implosion of relationships that do not allow for maintaining a quality that we would call social capital. We have the same in ecosystems, where when you're disrupting or accelerating the way that you use ecosystems beyond their regenerative capacity, so a circle of water being interrupted because you're, for example, cutting down forests to a degree that the canopies cannot catch the clouds, or the canopies are not big enough anymore to provide shade for the water to not be instantly evaporating from the ground. You're disrupting a balanced system. Again, this is providing natural capital. And if you only look at how do we fund the square meter of wood that we need to build, that's exactly the itemized way of looking at ecosystems. So we see that both in the social systems, individual firms and their value we don't look at how a very predatory way might have led to them becoming very big and what's happening to the rest. And we do the same with the ecosystems, and we don't understand how we're undermining their capacity to regenerate and thus provide for us. So we have to get out of the atomized and itemized way of looking at reality that is so prone to economic thinking, because it has to put a price tag on everything that wants to become visible. In theory, I think where you really want to go when you think about a paradigm shift is you ask, why do you need a paradigm shift? And that usually emerges from a deviation necessity, be it either out of crisis, because you notice that the structures you build according to a particular paradigm, aka looking at the world in a particular way, does not work anymore. So you're being disturbed. So your way of providing solutions and searching for them does not re-provide stability. Or it can be a positive, an imaginary deviation from the status quo, when you think, wow, we can do better. And incidentally, with sustainability, we have both, because we have the crisis moments, we have really concerns about hitting planetary boundaries, but we could also have a totally positive design pull moment where you say, why are we using or producing so much waste? Why are our products so unbelievably unnecessarily heavy on resource intensity? Why aren't we searching for the solutions that don't fight or make us fight over resources or next other countries, but that are actually trying to function within the territories that we tend to occupy or tend to live in? So there is both. Wanting to start thinking about what we have overlooked in the old paradigm, and that's a lot of the ecological and natural capital. And then you can use both instincts, but you have to describe the future as such. So you have to have a vision that will capture this. And this is why I think the best way of capturing the new economic paradigm for the 21st century, say high well-being within planetary boundaries or with the lowest possible ecological footprint. Thinking about the future always moves to the forefront in times of crisis, because then you're challenged to think what is going to be able to stay and what might we have to change, because it comes under pressure. And when you think about the big promise of the 20th century after 2 world wars, it was that we will cooperate and we will integrate our economies in a way that they will provide for everyone. Humanity as one group was an invention of the 20th century. The United Nations. It wasn't there before. We always had wars between different parts of the world, and we never were as integrated between all the different parts of the world. The whole sustainability agenda was extending the promise to future generations. It was saying we will find a pathway of development that current generations, and that really meant all people on this planet, will be able to thrive without compromising the abilities for those coming after us. And now what we see, the major crisis that we have, is that we haven't been succeeding in this quick enough. And now we see main lead aggressive protagonists to say, we don't accept that value proposition any longer. Well-being or welfare for all is scrapped from their agenda. And this is what creates fear. And I think we have to understand how hitting the planetary boundaries is a driver of exactly that capitulation that leads to aggression, in a way of saying we're going to annex the places that still have the resources. So we're not compromising on our unsustainable way of life, but we're going to kill scientific evidence. We're just going to pretend climate change isn't happening. We're going to pretend that there is no scientific evidence on health and what keeps people healthy. And this is, we can rule by strength, and we can rule by subordination, and we rule by military force as necessary. And on the way there, we use a lot of economic blackmailing, just to make sure that people fall in track with an old paradigm that I think we have understood in the 20th century was not a pathway to a peaceful collaboration.